The Sacramento Kings lose again, this time to the Utah Jazz. The Kings are now 0-4 in preseason, and you can decide whether you want to hit the panic button or not. Today, we'll look at the facts right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter at ABC 10 News in Sacramento, back here inside the ABC 10 studios, where I will be a lot this season, especially after road games, and hopefully I'll be more positive than I have to be tonight. Now, like I said in the introduction, Kings lose to the Utah Jazz, 117-114, the final score. Kings now 0-4 in preseason. It's up to you. And if you want to share with me how you're feeling, if you're feeling like, it's just preseason, get them out of the way now, I'm still okay, I'm cool, it's fine. Or if you're on the other end of this team is not winning games that they should be winning, they have these concerns, I'm freaking out, I'm panicking, I don't think this team is good enough. Wherever side you are or wherever you end up on that spectrum, hey, feel free to share them with me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I'm not going to start this podcast telling you whether or not you should be panicking. That's up for you to decide. But what I'm going to do for you is lay out the facts of this preseason to this point, the good and the bad. I'm not going to attach any emotion to it. I'm just going to read you and talk to you about facts from this preseason to help influence your overall feeling of where this Sacramento Kings team is at. Number one, the Kings have played 3 teams who were beneath them in the Western Conference standings last season, and therefore are expected to be even further beneath them this year if they want to get to where they're trying to get to as one of the top teams in this very difficult Western Conference. 3 teams beneath them, and the Kings are 0-4 in their games. They have not defeated a single one of these teams that they are supposed to be better than. The Kings, over these 4 games, are shooting 35 of 139 shots. That is 25% from three-point range in preseason. 25% from 3 in 4 games. From the free throw line, the Kings in these 4 preseason games are shooting 58 of 81. That is 71% from the foul line. Last season, the Kings were dead last in the NBA in free throw shooting at 74%. 3 percentage points better than they are shooting from the free throw line right now. The Kings are averaging 20 second chance points and 14.5 offensive rebounds a game in preseason. The 20 second chance points would have been first in the NBA last season by a 4-point margin, and their 14.5 offensive rebounds per game actually ties their own number from last season, which was 3rd in the NBA. So they're consistently sticking with that. They're scoring more in these second chance opportunities. The Kings are averaging 21 fast break points per game in these 4 preseason games, which would have been first in the NBA by a +2 margin, 2 more than first in the NBA last year. The Kings are averaging 12.5 steals a game in the preseason, which would have been first in the NBA by a 4-steal margin last season. So you have some numbers where the Kings have not only improved, they are in these 4 games performing at a higher rate than any other team did last season. Now, of course, that's 4 games compared to 82 games, but this is the sample size that we have in front of us. There's clear improvement statistically in areas of focus for this team. There's also a clear, concerning shooting trend. There's a clear, continued free throw shooting issue, and the Sacramento Kings, one of the many ways they were beaten by the Utah Jazz tonight is the fact that the Kings shot 14 of 19 from the foul line, 73%, while the Utah Jazz shot 27 of 30, 90% from the foul line. The Jazz showed the Kings, gave them a direct lesson is in when you make your free throws, you have a great chance to win a basketball game, and those numbers add up, especially when it becomes a close game, and this game was close pretty much the entire night. So take those numbers, those facts. There's no opinion attached to any of them. Take those numbers that I laid out for you in these 4 games in preseason so far, and now you decide, based off of the good and the bad in those statistics, how you feel about where the Sacramento Kings are at. Look, here's the bottom line. In preseason, winning or losing does not matter. The final score does not matter. The record looks bad if you're 0-4, looks great if you're 4-0, but it all goes away. Poof. In like 3 days, it'll be gone. It'll be into the ether. It will not matter anymore. Nor will any of these numbers, good and bad. What matters in the preseason is you are playing to prepare yourself for real basketball. So you don't just go into the season cold, right? Preseason is the time for you to measure where you're at against other competition while they're working on their own things, figure out what you need to address, what you don't need to address, and hopefully take all that information, take all that experience, take all the conditioning, take all of that and use it to best be ready to go come October 24th in the Kings' case against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Kings have shown improvement in clear areas of focus. Fast break points, second chance points, overall half-court offense. Better for this Sacramento Kings team. More efficient. The three-point shooting is consistently bad enough because 4 games shooting this poorly from three-point range. Sure, you can call it a cold stretch if you want to. What is it showing us? It is showing us that if this team cannot shoot the basketball well, they can, and in this case, will lose to anybody. That's a concerning trend. Of course, we know this team is not at 100% full health yet and is missing a couple of guys that could really help them with their three-point shooting. But regardless, no matter who's out, the Kings should not be shooting threes as poorly as they are over these 4 preseason games so far. To be clear, I do not expect the three-point shooting to be this bad by any means for the Sacramento Kings come the regular season. I'm not saying October 24th they're suddenly going to start to shoot the basketball better. I'm saying when we go through a large portion of the beginning of the season, let's say the first 20 games of the season, I expect the Kings' three-point shooting percentage to be significantly better than the, 25% that they're shooting from 3 in preseason. In fact, I know that everybody in the Kings organization has more than enough confidence in the Kings' ability to hit those shots. The shots are going to start falling. That is the belief amongst the organization. Why? Because the Kings aren't forcing things. They're generating good looks. They're getting a lot of good looks in the flow of the offense off of paint touches, which is a pillar of Mike Brown's offense. They're reacting and reading and moving to how the defense is reacting to them, especially when DeMar DeRozan puts the ball on the floor, or De'Aaron Fox attacks, or Domantas Sabonis is working in the high post. The Kings are generating the looks that they want. They're just not dropping right now. And that's magnified tenfold in a game like this where the Utah Jazz did a very, very good job of protecting the rim. Why? Because they felt that they could just let the Kings shoot. Dare the Kings to beat you from the perimeter with how bad they've been shooting, and that gamble worked out for them. However, I will say this, it just barely worked out for them. Whether you want to call this a silver lining or not, a coping mechanism or not, here's the real deal. The Kings have, with the exception of the Portland game, which I think was a complete anomaly, the Kings have been in every single one of these preseason games and have not shot the ball well at all. They have not come close to playing as well, especially on the offensive end, as we expect them to. If this is who they are defensively, okay. But defensively, they're still good enough to be in every single game except for the Portland game to this point. Granted, it's against some of the lower competition in the West. They play this way defensively against OKC or Denver or Dallas. Maybe it's a lot uglier. But again, all we can do is go off of what we see in front of us. Unsurprisingly, the defensive issues are still clearly there. Believe it or not, the issue with dealing with length didn't just disappear. The issue with teams getting and touching your paint far too often, which has opened a lot of that three-point shooting, which the Kings so heavily struggled with last season, that didn't just go away. So the Kings still have a lot of work to do defensively. The Kings are making more noticeable individual defensive plays, whether it's Keon Ellis or De'Aaron Fox or Jordan McLaughlin or whoever. I've noticed in this preseason more solid, repeatable, individual defensive moments. The unfortunate part is, I wouldn't say, maybe not in a majority of them, a lot of them, far too many of them result in a team defensive breakdown. De'Aaron Fox will have a good defensive play, force a bad shot, there's an offensive rebound and a putback for 2 points. Or the Kings will take 18 seconds off of the shot clock defensively with overall good defense led by Keon Ellis, and then they'll give up a easy shot at the rim at the very, very tail end of the shot clock to erase the entire defensive possession. It's happened too many times in this preseason so far. Preseason is intended to prepare you for the regular season. On one hand, you're seeing these issues and you know what you need to do and you need to address them. And you can do so at a time where the losing that you're suffering by learning these issues or evaluating these issues, that's not actually truly killing you. That being said, a lot of these issues that we're seeing have been known issues going back to last season. And I've seen, whether it's in my comment section or on social media or whatever, I've seen the excuse/coping mechanism of, hey, it's preseason. The guys aren't giving their all. They're not playing at the with the effort that they would if this was a regular season game and it really truly mattered. That doesn't make me feel better. And I don't fully subscribe to that. Do I think the Kings would play overall better? Do I think the Kings will overall play better when it actually matters? Yes, I do. Do I think the Kings are intentionally taking plays off because it's the preseason? Not really. But even if they were, that is concerning considering last season in particular, but more than just last season. The Kings have had an issue of consistency that has been dictated by the quality of their opponent. They have not played as well as they should against bad opponents. So if here they are playing teams in the preseason that we believe they are better than, and they're not beating them because they're not playing hard enough, whether it's preseason or not, that's a continuation of a pattern. And that's concerning for me. I have some notes about individual players from tonight's game that I want to talk about, some good and some bad, plus a couple of off-the-court topics to get to in today's show. One involving Kevin Huerter and the golden opportunity facing him when he returns, and another involving that roster spot that the Sacramento Kings opened up in that McDaniels trade yesterday. I'll get to all of that here coming up in just a second. Before that, though, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, whether it's betting on NFL games to get you to the NBA season, maybe you're betting on the NBA preseason, college football, whatever it is, once you try FanDuel, you will realize that while you are watching the game and following the game, and when you start to get those hunches of, oh, I think the game's going to go this way, or I think this player's going to make this big play, or I think this team is going to do this, and you watch those hunches before your eyes come true, and you're like, I knew it. Well, now you can start making money off of those hunches. But on FanDuel, what they do is while you're watching the game, the same place that you can place bets on FanDuel, you have access to all the information you could possibly need, including the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more. All the information there in front of you, so you can pair your hunch with what the numbers are saying, make the best decision with your money to hopefully make money off of that high basketball, football, sports, whatever IQ that you have. And when you get started on FanDuel, if you bet $5, a $5 bet on anything, whether you win or lose, doesn't matter, because you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed for you to really start playing and really make some money on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, some individual player performance notes to talk about. Let's start with this. Mike Brown got what he wanted, I guess. He initially, in the Portland game that the Kings got their butts kicked, he wanted to see what it looked like, or he wanted to get his main guys in for a full game. Well, he got that. He got that tonight. DeMar DeRozan, 36.5 minutes. Keegan Murray, 37 minutes. Domantas Sabonis, 36 minutes. Keon Ellis, 23.5 minutes. De'Aaron Fox, 36.5 minutes. Malik Monk, 29 minutes. Jordan McLaughlin, 20 minutes. The Kings got to play their main guys in the fourth quarter, and these guys played pretty equivalent to the amount of minutes that they're going to consistently play come regular season time. So Mike got what he wanted, and we got our first glimpse at fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox and fourth quarter DeMar DeRozan together, the two arguably clutchest players in the NBA. And, well, De'Aaron Fox in the fourth quarter, 6 points. 2 of 8 shooting from the field, 1 of 4 from three-point range. Did have 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. DeMar DeRozan, 6 points, 3 of 4 from the field, 0 of 1 from three-point range, 1 rebound, 1 steal, 1 turnover in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter was the only quarter where the Sacramento Kings outscored the Utah Jazz, and they outscored them 31-30 in the final 12 minutes. Fox and DeRozan, I think, scored 7 of the first 9 points of the fourth quarter for Sacramento, which brought them back to actually tie the game up. They were good. I think I was looking for more. Like, trying to process it. You look at the numbers and watching it, it didn't wow me. And I think it's unfair to expect to be wowed by either or both of those players the first glimpse that we get in the fourth quarter of a game. There were some really good defensive moments, or really good moments, period. One of them that jumps to mind is De'Aaron Fox and his excellent defense on Lauri Markkanen, forcing a turnover down the stretch, right? Because Markkanen was cooking, and the Kings were able to force that turnover, and it was a complete individual defensive effort by De'Aaron Fox. We know how good he can be defensively in a close game when he truly locks in. But overall, I'm not going to say that I wasn't impressed. I'm not going to say that it was particularly bad or anything like that. And maybe it's just because the Sacramento Kings ended up losing the game. I guess I just kind of feel indifferent about what I saw. Not indifferent enough or negative enough or positive enough to swing any one way. I still feel very, very confident in both of their abilities to win a game for the Kings in the fourth quarter, and I believe we are going to see that not just once or twice, but many times over the course of the season. That belief hasn't wavered. But this was the first glimpse we got, and they were good, but unfortunately not good enough to help the Kings ultimately close out and win this game. Jordan McLaughlin was very impressive. Very impressive. These 2 games that he's played, I know the first one was the Portland blowout, but when McLaughlin's been on the floor, I've been happy with what I've seen. He looks like a really smart, solid pickup for the Sacramento Kings this summer. McLaughlin had 9 points, 4 of 9 shooting from the field, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals. He came in, made the right decisions defensively, offensively made really smart plays, scored the basketball a couple of times. Jordan McLaughlin played really, really solid, which is all you can ask for from someone in his position. And now initially I thought, and he could still be, initially I thought the Jordan McLaughlin acquisition was in many ways a placeholder for Devin Carter while Carter recovers from his shoulder injury. Jordan McLaughlin plays like this, Devin Carter's going to get cleared and come back and not have a spot because of how important and impactful McLaughlin was specifically in this game for the Kings. And he played some fourth quarter minutes at times over Malik Monk and was really solid in those fourth quarter minutes. Overall, just a steady presence off the bench. And when you can talk about members of your bench as steady, that's a good quality to have from a guy in a second unit. Domantas Sabonis dominated this game. Dominated. 29 points, 16 rebounds, 11 of which were offensive rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals. Unfortunately, as good as his numbers were, he had 23 points in the first half, which means he only had 6 in the second half. And I think that reinforces some people's feelings of when it matters most in a playoff type situation, can Domantas Sabonis go out and get you a bucket? Well, if you watch the game, while Sabonis, it would have been nice to see Sabonis score a little bit more in the second half. One, the Kings were looking to Sabonis to score less in the second half. Number two, Sabonis was still grabbing a boatload of offensive rebounds and creating a lot of second and even third chance opportunities for the Kings in the third and fourth quarters. And then even though he wasn't the guy that was scoring, he was getting those opportunities and getting the ball out to someone who more often than not was at least getting up a good shot. Whether or not it went in, that is up to them. Sabonis was doing his job. Sabonis did what he needed to do to win. And what he also proved in this game is that he's more than capable offensively of taking on a scoring load and leading this team in scoring if either the matchup or the situation calls for it. And what I mean by that is, let's say the guys are struggling. De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan did not get off to a good offensive start in this game. Nobody from the Kings outside of Keegan Murray could hit a three-pointer in the first 3 quarters, it felt like. Because of Sabonis' offense, he was able to keep them steady and keep them in the game while those guys worked through those tough shooting nights. And then his offensive rebounding, especially down the stretch, gave them more than just a chance, gave them multiple chances. And unfortunately, their poor shooting, they just weren't able to convert. Malik Monk, really bad night. 5 points, 2 of 12 from the field, 1 of 7 from three-point range, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers. It was a rough and clearly frustrating night for Malik. In fact, he got subbed out of the game at one point in the fourth quarter, and you could see on his body language he was not happy. He was coming out of the game, and I don't know if it was the towel on the ground or something, but he kicked it like he was not happy. And he's not frustrated or angry because Mike Brown pulled him out of the game. At least I don't believe so. He's frustrated and he's angry at himself because he holds himself to a high standard, just like the Kings hold themselves to a high standard. And when they're that good of players, especially offensively, which is the primary skill of the vast majority of this roster, this Kings roster is loaded with good shooters who played tonight. And this entire preseason, they're shooting 25% from three-point range. That's frustrating no matter who you are. Malik wasn't good tonight. Once again, the Kings had a chance to win. If Malik Monk was close to his normal self, the Kings do win this game. I'm not concerned at all by Malik Monk's scoring night. Bad nights are going to happen, and hopefully these are very, very few and far between for Malik. Finally, I thought Keegan Murray was more aggressive overall. He had 21 points, 8 of 19 from the field, 5 of 11 from three-point range, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He really carried the load three-point shooting-wise for Sacramento tonight. That being said, when it came to the fourth quarter, when it came to crunch time, when it came to the Kings needing a 3 to tie the game late or even take a lead, I thought Keegan was a little too timid at times. More aggressive overall throughout the game. Definitely attacking. He put up 19 shots. Love that from Keegan. But down the stretch, it still looked like whether he shrunk from the moment or was being too passive because of the names and quality of players around him. I just thought he was a little too timid in the fourth quarter, which is something we know he and the Kings need to work on. All right, a couple more things to talk about, both of them off the court. One involving the Jalen McDaniels trade and the roster spot the Kings opened because of that. I have a little bit of a theory about that trade and kind of trying to play Clue with it and figure it out a little bit. And then I want to talk to you about the golden opportunity that is facing Kevin Huerter. That's all coming for you here after I tell you more about our great title sponsor of the Locked On Kings podcast. This episode, I'm talking about Game Time. This is the app that you need to go to purchase your tickets this season, whether it's Kings tickets, NFL tickets for the 49ers if you want to go. Let's talk about, like baseball tickets for next season. I don't know, concert tickets, big stadium show, smaller venue, local theatrical productions, or local comedy clubs. Game Time's got tickets for all of it. And here's the best part about Game Time. The closer it gets to the event, the better deals you are going to get. That's right, Game Time almost rewards you for procrastination, but it's because they recognize that, look, stuff happens in life. You may not be sure if you can go or not. They also recognize supply and demand, too. As the event gets closer and closer and closer, if those tickets aren't selling, why just let them sit there and vanish into the ether with nobody purchasing them because they're too expensive? Lower those prices the closer you get. Their flash deals are second to none. They have an unbelievable feature called all-in pricing. You can toggle it on. It'll show you exactly what you're paying from the second you select your seats. No more hidden fees that hit you at the very, very last page of checkout. Their seat views are incredible. Their lowest price guarantee is legit, and their ticketing coverage is better than anything else you will find. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So it's only been a little over 24 hours, maybe like 30 hours, since the Sacramento Kings traded Jalen McDaniels to the San Antonio Spurs. We still know that the Kings aren't getting anything back from this deal, or we still haven't heard that they're getting anything back. And then the plan is for the San Antonio Spurs to, I believe, waive McDaniels and get him off their books so he becomes a free agent. So it's a salary dump, roster spot opening move for the Sacramento Kings. Now, we speculated, because I share with you, this move is not a by itself move, right? There's no way the Kings are just opening up this roster spot and not doing anything with it. That's not how Monty operates. Common sense tells you something else is coming. And we speculated, hey, maybe this is the move that the Kings could make to open up the roster spot to bring in one of the guys that they've been working out this offseason. Guys like either Jay Crowder or TJ Warren were the main guys. But Jay Crowder is kind of the name that people have been talking about. The more time goes on, the more I don't think that's the main plan. Not that it won't happen, but what would be the delay, right? What would be the delay to getting that? If he's a free agent, you're not competing with anybody else. Maybe you're negotiating figures, but I don't think anybody thinks like a Jay Crowder or TJ Warren. It's either they have a job on a league minimum contract or they don't have a job. So what is the delay? You would want to get the player in as soon as possible, not to help you win a preseason game, to get them comfortable with the team as the regular season approaches. So the more time goes on, the more I think going out and getting a league minimum veteran free agent is not the main plan for the Sacramento Kings. I think plan A might be a trade in the works, that the Kings are still negotiating or trying to work out a deal with somebody. Now, I've heard people and I've read and I've seen people bringing up Brandon Ingram again. I am not subscribing to that theory. I'm not reporting anything. I'm not telling you I've heard everything. To make it perfectly clear, I am not saying that I've heard Brandon Ingram is not coming to Sacramento, that those trade talks have not happened. I don't know. I'm speculating here. Me personally, I am not subscribing to the belief that suddenly Brandon Ingram is back on the table. It's still a financial nightmare. The Pelicans are still going to want what they want for it, which involves Keegan Murray, which is not going to happen unless suddenly, as the season gets closer, the Pelicans are getting cold feet and are willing to drastically change their mind. Plus, the Kings will have all sorts of financial issues in trying to make that trade happen. And I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it makes sense. If it happens, I'll be shocked. I'll be surprised. I'll be happy to say I'm wrong. But I'm not a subscriber and a believer in suddenly the Brandon Ingram talks have reignited. But maybe a Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, two names with the Brooklyn Nets who have kind of been there in the back of our minds for a while. I'm not saying those are the guys that the Kings are going after, but clearly this team needs, drastically, desperately needs wing help. Clearly. It's literally Keegan. That is it. That is their 3 depth, or wing depth. They need help at that position. So I think the Kings are working right now as we speak to use that roster spot to try and come up with a trade to bring in some wing help, some actual legitimate will play and will contribute wing help for this team, because they still very clearly, based off of training camp and preseason, very, very clearly need it. And then if they can't find it, if they can't make the deal work, they can't figure it out, then they go to plan B, which is, hey, let's use this roster spot and go get us a Jay Crowder. The more time goes on, the more that makes the most sense to me. Finally, let's talk about a guy that can really provide some needed reinforcements for the Sacramento Kings. I'm talking about Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter is staring at a golden opportunity, right? Because he's working his way back, right? In theory, he told us yesterday that today in shoot-around before the game, he was going to get some opportunity to actually work 5-on-5 with the team for the first time in a long time. Kevin Huerter is sitting there throughout preseason and training camp watching the Sacramento Kings brick threes, watching this team shoot 25% from three-point range. This team desperately needs his primary skill. If you're Kevin Huerter, you're like, they need me. I'm going to put my cape on. I can be a superhero for this team when I come back. If Kevin Huerter comes out of the gate, makes a triumphant return, and is knocking down threes, the 40% clip that we know he's capable of doing, oh my God, he'll be a godsend for this team. And there is a scenario where Kevin Huerter can quite literally shoot himself back into the starting lineup. Quite literally. And I'm not saying that because I'm blaming Keon Ellis for the Kings' 0-4 preseason start. It's not Keon Ellis' fault. But what I'm saying is, if Kevin Huerter is on, if Kevin Huerter is shooting the basketball well, regardless of what anybody else is doing, but especially in a time where the Kings can't hit water if they fell out of a boat from three-point range right now. If Kevin Huerter comes in and is knocking down threes at a high enough clip, it's going to be hard as hell for Mike Brown to keep him off the floor. Even if that means sacrificing Keon Ellis' defense with the starting unit to get that shooting and get that scoring out there. Now, I think for the most part, the Sacramento Kings offensive unit, with the exception of three-point shooting, has looked solid enough offensively. So maybe Kevin Huerter is just perfect to come back and be that flamethrower, high-volume three-point shooter off of the bench alongside Malik Monk. Maybe that's what he's destined for. But clearly, this team is in desperate need of three-point shooting. And Kevin Huerter's right there waiting in the wings going, oh, just let me back out there. I got you. I am here to save the day. It's really helpful when the Kings clearly need something and the player who they're excited to get back is expected to directly provide that, or that is their primary skill, right? That has to feel pretty good if you're Kevin Huerter. All right, again, I want to hear from you. Where are you at right now? You panicking? You freaking out? Nervous? A little bit concerned? Or still chill? Hey, it's preseason, Matt. There's other teams. I think the Denver Nuggets are winless in preseason. I think they've gotten blown out 1 or 2 times in preseason. Maybe that's you. Wherever you're at, let's talk about it. At Matt George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I'm excited to talk to the one and only Jerry Reynolds, Sacramento Kings broadcast, coaching, general manager, legend. Jerry Reynolds will join me on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. I'm looking forward to getting his take on what's going on, what is bothering him or concerns him versus, hey, it's just preseason. Things will be fine. Jerry will either get us all to panic or help maybe talk us off the ledge a little bit when it comes to this Kings team. Also, if you didn't check it out, earlier on the Locked On Kings podcast channel, is on all our NBA channels, but we did our NBA season previews, and we did a season preview with some of the other teams in the West that are expected to be kind of in the hunt Western Conference category. The Lakers, the Warriors, the Kings, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans. We came together and did kind of a roundtable episode to talk about these teams and talk about this season. So go and check that out. It's available for you right now. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.